Hey, if you or your family have Canadian roots, but you're living abroad, you're absolutely going to want to listen to this. We're about to break down a huge change in Canadian citizenship law, one that could literally decide whether you or your kids are actually Canadian. So let's just dive right in. So let's start with a really direct question. Just imagine this for a second. Your grandparent was Canadian, and because of that, your parent is also Canadian, even though they were born outside of Canada. So that means you're Canadian too, right? I mean, it seems obvious. But for a lot of families, the answer has been a really frustrating no. And the reason for that no? Well, it all comes down to one single rule that's at the heart of this whole thing. It's called the first generation limit. And man, it has made things complicated for Canadians all over the world. What this rule basically says is that citizenship by descent gets capped after just one generation born abroad. So if your Canadian parent was also born outside Canada, that's it. The chain of citizenship just breaks. The Canadian government has even admitted that this has had, and I'm quoting here, unacceptable consequences for a lot of people. Okay, but here's where the story gets really interesting. This whole situation has been thrown into this kind of legal gray zone, all because of a major court ruling that put the entire law in limbo. So get this, a court actually struck down this law, said it was unconstitutional, but, and this is the part you really need to understand, the ruling is suspended. The best way to think about it is like a rain delay in a baseball game. The game is stopped because something big happened, but the old rules are still technically in play until the game officially starts again with a new set of rules. We're in a temporary holding pattern. So let's look at the key dates here. It all kicked off on December 19th, 2023, with that huge court decision. Then, on March 13th, 2025, the government brought in a temporary fix to help people while Parliament figures out a new law. And everything is building towards this deadline, November 20th, 2025. That's when the court suspension ends, and a new law has to be ready to go. So for anyone caught in this legal mess, that March 13th date is a really big deal. It created a temporary but very real new path forward while we all wait for Parliament to sort things out. And the difference this makes, it's like night and day. Before, if this rule affected you, you were pretty much stuck at a dead end. But now, with this new interim measure, there's an actual process you can use to have your case looked at for something called a discretionary grant of citizenship. A door has opened where there used to be a brick wall. So, what is this thing exactly? Well, a discretionary grant, it falls under Section 5, subsection 4 of the Citizenship Act, is basically a special power. It lets the Minister of Immigration give citizenship in special cases. And here's the really important part. It can bypass some of the usual requirements, like having to live in Canada for a certain amount of time or taking knowledge tests. For people who've built their whole lives abroad, that's a huge deal. Okay, so this new path is there. The obvious next question is, who gets to walk on it? Let's break down exactly who is eligible to apply using this new temporary measure. A few different groups are covered here, which is great. It includes pretty much everyone who's been affected by the first generation limit. But I want you to pay extra close attention to that priority group. If your child was born on or after that court ruling date, their application could be put on the fast track if the Canadian parent has what's called a substantial connection to Canada. So what in the world is a substantial connection? Well, the government put a very specific number on it, 1,095 days. The Canadian parent has to have been physically in Canada for a grand total of at least that many days. That's 3 full years before their child was born. All right, now for what is probably the most important part of this whole explainer. We've talked about the what and the why. Now let's get into the how. This is your step-by-step guide to actually using this new interim measure. So you have to follow a very specific process here. It's super important. First, it's got to be a paper application. There is no online option for this yet. You also have to label everything really clearly and write a strong cover letter. And if your situation is urgent, you need to add a whole separate letter explaining that too. Okay, listen up, because this is the key. This exact phrase. Requesting discretionary consideration under subsection 5(4) of the Citizenship Act. You have to write this clearly on the application form itself and on the envelope. Think of it as the magic password that flags your file to be reviewed under this special new rule. If you forget it, your application might just get processed under the old restrictive rules.
Now, in that cover letter, you can't just say, I'd like to be a citizen, please. You need to build a solid case based on specific reasons. The three main arguments you can make are that not getting citizenship would make you stateless, that it would cause you special and unusual hardship, or that granting you citizenship would be of exceptional value to Canada.
So, you've put together your whole application, you've written the magic phrase on the envelope, you've mailed it off. Now what? What can you expect to happen next? And what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? All right, I'm going to be straight with you. Be prepared to wait. Standard processing for these kinds of applications can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years. However, if you have a really critical, immediate need for citizenship, we're talking things like accessing Canadian healthcare, getting a job that needs a social insurance number, or getting a pension, you can and absolutely should request urgent processing. So this all boils down to a pretty clear choice. This table kind of lays it all out. If you're affected by the first-generation limit and you need citizenship soon, your best bet is to apply now using this interim measure and just build the strongest case you can. But if your situation isn't urgent, you could decide to wait for Parliament to pass the new, permanent law. It might be more straightforward, but we just don't know how long that's going to take. At the end of the day, this temporary fix has opened a door that was bolted shut for so many people. It offers a real, tangible way to get Canadian citizenship for families who've been stuck in limbo. So the big question for you is a strategic one. Are you going to walk through the door that's open right now, or are you going to wait to see what kind of brand new law Parliament ends up building in its place? The choice is yours.